There comes a point in every woman's life when she no longer wants to chase love. She wants to be chosen, not for what she gives or how much she forgives, but for who she is, quietly, completely, without needing to ask. You've done the work. You've built a life. You've survived heartbreaks, raised children, maybe even started over more than once. And now, you're not interested in games. You want something real, something lasting. But here's the quiet truth no one tells you. A man doesn't commit because he should. He commits because something inside him shifts. Hi, I'm Vernon again, and in today's video, we're going to talk about that shift, the 7 powerful emotional awakenings a man must feel deep in his heart, in the silence of his own thoughts, before he'll ever truly commit to a woman. This isn't about tricks or tactics. It's about understanding how a man bonds, how he decides that this woman is the one he can't walk away from. If you find meaning in what we're exploring today, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may need to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. It helps this message reach others who are quietly searching, just like you. Now, let's look more closely at the first emotional shift, the one that often begins in silence but speaks the loudest when it's real.
1. He must feel safe in her presence emotionally, not just physically. Safety for a man is rarely about locked doors or alarm systems. It's about being seen, fully, without fear of judgment. In a world that often tells men to armor up, hold back, and never show weakness, the woman who allows him to lay those burdens down becomes unforgettable. Emotional safety doesn't mean tiptoeing around a man's ego or sacrificing your own boundaries. It means offering him a kind of sanctuary, not in perfection, but in presence. A place where his interior life, so often locked behind silence, finds a voice. Where he is not expected to fix, perform, or impress, but simply be. And in that being, be accepted. In the stillness of that kind of presence, something profound happens. A man begins to sense that he is not being observed to be judged, but to be understood. Not to be changed, but to be known. This is not softness, it's sacred ground. Because when a man is no longer performing, he is finally revealing. And what he reveals is his truest self. In that moment, her gaze becomes more powerful than applause. Her silence becomes more healing than praise. He begins to return, not because she needs him to, but because he needs that feeling of being safe, grounded, and fully seen. As the philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, "The heart has its reasons, which reason knows not." A man may not even be able to explain why he keeps coming back to the woman who gives him that sense of inner peace, but he will, again and again. When he feels he can be both soft and strong with you, the lines between fear and love begin to blur. And in that space, commitment takes root, not because he must, but because he wants to. But safety is only the beginning. There's another emotional shift, quieter, deeper, that starts to emerge when a man sees something in her that reflects the kind of future he didn't know he wanted. Let's explore that next. 2. He must see a future with her, one that feels like home, not a sacrifice. When I first met the woman who would become my wife, I wasn't looking for forever. I was young, caught up in the noise of ambition, distraction, and the illusion that freedom meant never settling. But somewhere between her laughter and the way she looked at the world, with quiet clarity and strength, I saw something unfamiliar. I saw peace. I saw a version of the future that didn't feel like giving something up, but gaining something I didn't even know I was missing. It wasn't dramatic, there was no lightning bolt, but I remember the moment I realized I didn't want to imagine the next chapter of my life without her in it. And that changed everything. The truth is, men aren't afraid of commitment. We're afraid of losing ourselves inside it. The relationships that endure aren't the ones where a man surrenders his dreams, but where those dreams transform and expand because she's part of them. This shift happens when a man sees more than companionship. He sees a shared vision, a partner, not a passenger, a life that doesn't shrink him but steadies him. The Roman philosopher Seneca once wrote, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." In love, that luck becomes devotion, when readiness meets resonance. When a man sees in a woman not just love, but direction, a life shaped with intention, with shared values, with laughter, purpose, and resilience, he stops asking, "What will I lose if I commit?" and begins to ask, "What might I gain if I don't?" And sometimes the most binding thread isn't passion, it's peace. The quiet kind. The kind that makes you want to go home early, just to sit next to her in the kitchen while she tells you about her day. Still, even the most vivid vision of a shared future can only go so far. What truly seals a man's devotion often rises from a place more ancient, more instinctive than planning or promise. It's a quiet, enduring signal he feels from her, often before he can name it. And when he does, something in him settles. Let's lean into that next.
3. Must feel admired, not for what he achieves, but for who he is at his core. Have you ever wondered why a man can be surrounded by people, yet still feel deeply alone? It's because most of the world only sees what he does, not who he is. The promotions, the problem-solving, the way he holds everyone together. But few pause long enough to admire the man underneath the armor, his intent, his effort, his quiet integrity. And yet, this is what he longs for most: to be witnessed, not as a provider or protector alone, but as a human being whose worth isn't tied to outcomes. When a woman sees and reflects back his deeper qualities, his resilience, his kindness when no one's watching, the way he stays when others leave, that recognition becomes magnetic. Research from the Gottman Institute, known for decades of relationship studies, shows that men who feel respected and appreciated by their partner are 3 times more likely to commit long-term. Not because of duty, but because admiration meets a primal need to be valued not just for, but in love. This isn't about flattery or praise. It's about sincere recognition, the kind that's quiet, timely, and personal. A look, a word,
A simple, "I saw what you did, and it mattered." That's the moment a man feels chosen for who he really is. If this part stirs something in you, save this video. These are the kinds of truths we often forget, but return to again and again. I've spent more than half my life learning this the hard way, and I promise you'll want to hear it more than once. Because when admiration runs deep, a man no longer feels like he's striving to earn a place in your life. He feels like he belongs there. Even when a man feels safe, sees a future, and is deeply admired, there's still another level he must reach, one that shifts not just how he sees you, but how he sees himself in your presence. And that's where we're heading next.
4. He must feel elevated by her presence, like a better version of himself. What if the person you love the most also makes you feel the smallest? That quiet contradiction has ruined more potential than betrayal ever has. Because the truth is, admiration without elevation falls flat. A man may feel appreciated, even respected, but if he doesn't feel expanded by being with you, he will eventually drift. The philosopher Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." In love, that privilege either awakens or it withers, depending on who stands beside you. There is a marked difference between a relationship that reinforces a man's highest self and one that simply maintains his comfort zone. One nourishes his growth, the other numbs it. Picture two landscapes. In one, the man walks a well-worn path, predictable and safe. In the other, he walks beside someone who quietly urges him toward the mountain, not by force, but by reflection. Her questions make him think. Her presence challenges his passivity. Her courage humbles his ego. And in her presence, he begins to dream in ways he forgot he could. This is the kind of connection that rewires a man's inner narrative, not with pressure, but with possibility. Psychological research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people in relationships where their partner sees them as capable of growth and reflects that belief are more likely to take positive life actions. They pursue meaningful goals, take emotional risks, and deepen their commitment. So, if you've ever been told you're too deep, too driven, or too much, know this: to the right man, that depth won't intimidate, it will inspire. When a man feels like the best version of himself around you, not only does he stay, he strives, he evolves, and suddenly commitment is no longer a decision, it's a natural unfolding. Still, no matter how much a man evolves beside her, there's one final thread that must hold firm, and it weaves itself through something far more fragile than we often admit: trust. Not just the trust of promises kept, but the trust of being safe with his soul. So let's step gently into that space now.
5. He must trust her with his inner world, even the parts he's never shown. Isn't it strange how a man can be strong for everyone,
and yet be terrified to reveal the part of himself that feels unsure, afraid, or unfinished. Trust is often misunderstood as the absence of betrayal. But for a man, true trust isn't just about loyalty. It's about the rare permission to not have all the answers. In a society that teaches him to always lead, always fix, always protect, the greatest risk he takes is handing someone else the map to his inner world. That kind of trust doesn't come from shared experiences alone. It's built in the quiet moments, when he says something uncertain and isn't corrected, when he admits a fear and isn't made smaller, when he reveals a flaw and she doesn't flinch. In her presence, his humanity is safe. His cracks are not liabilities, they are bridges. Philosopher Alain de Botton once wrote, "We fall in love not with perfection, but with someone whose brokenness speaks gently to our own. That kind of love doesn't demand healing, it invites it." When a man feels he can place his story in your hands, not just the victories, but the scars, and knows they'll be held with care, he begins to open in ways he may never have before. And from that openness comes a bond deeper than logic, deeper than passion. It becomes a kind of belonging. If this resonates, I invite you to like the video, not just for me, but so this message lives longer, reaches further. There's someone else, somewhere, who needs to be reminded of this. Because once a man feels that his full self, even the messy parts, can rest in your presence, he no longer fears the vulnerability of commitment. He embraces it. But trust, as sacred as it is, isn't the end of the story. There is still one more thing he must feel, something even rarer, something that stirs not just his heart, but his sense of purpose. Let's uncover that next.
6. He must feel that loving you gives his life greater meaning. As Aristotle once said, love is composed of a single soul inhabiting two bodies. In its truest form, love becomes not just a bond between two people, but a sacred alignment of purpose, meaning, and presence. It is the longing to matter deeply to someone else, and to feel that who we are and how we love leaves a mark beyond our own lifetime. For many men, the world is a proving ground. From an early age, they're taught to chase success, strength, and significance. But there comes a moment, quietly, often later in life, when a man realizes that what he truly seeks isn't admiration from the crowd, but alignment with a deeper purpose. In this shift, a relationship stops being just a place of comfort or chemistry or even safety. It becomes something sacred, a mirror for his legacy. As Viktor Frankl, the renowned Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. In love, that same truth applies. A man doesn't fear devotion. He fears devoting himself to something meaningless. When a man feels that being with a woman brings out the why of his life, when her presence doesn't just inspire but grounds him, he feels something that is both humbling and electrifying. Significance. not in the eyes of the world, but in the quiet moments between two hearts. This doesn't mean a woman becomes his purpose. It means her presence awakens the one already waiting within him. And this is rare. This is why he stays. If these words echo something you've felt but couldn't quite name, take a moment to breathe it in. And if you haven't already, give this video a like so it stays close. You may want to come back to this part when life feels unclear. Now, there's just one final piece, the rarest emotional shift of all. And when a man feels this, not just once, but consistently, something irreversible happens. He stops guarding his heart, and he begins to build with it. Let's bring it all home in the final point.
7. He must feel that loving you is a legacy, not just a relationship. I've come to believe this deeply, that the kind of love a man stays for is the kind that feels like it matters beyond today. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, what we do now echoes in eternity. And for a man to truly commit, his love must begin to feel like an echo that lasts, not just a passing connection, but a contribution to something greater than himself. By the time a man is ready to give his heart, he has likely lived enough to understand what is fleeting and what endures. He knows the difference between passion and purpose, between being consumed by love and being called by it. This final emotional shift is not loud. It is not dramatic. It often comes in the stillness when he watches her walk through a room or hears her speak into the quiet with grace and clarity. In those moments, he sees not just a partner, but a legacy in motion. A life that with her becomes more aligned with truth, with impact, with peace. He begins to realize this isn't just the woman he wants beside him. This is the woman he wants to be remembered for having loved well. And in that realization, commitment becomes effortless. It's no longer a contract, it's a devotion. Not just to her, but to the version of himself he only ever became because he loved her. If this final truth landed with you, if it stirred something you didn't expect, I hope you'll save this video or maybe send it to someone who needs to hear it. These are lessons that take a lifetime to learn, but just a moment of clarity to change everything. So now that we've walked through all 7 emotional awakenings, perhaps the real question is not just what makes a man commit, but what kind of love makes him never want to leave. We've walked through 7 emotional awakenings. Not tricks, not formulas, but deep, inner shifts that make a man choose love, not out of obligation, but out of recognition, out of reverence. We talked about safety, the kind that calms the storm. A future, one that feels like home, not a trade-off. Admiration, elevation, trust, meaning, and ultimately, legacy. Each of these is not a step, but a layer. Together, they form a foundation that's not only strong, but sacred. And perhaps, as Rainer Maria Rilke once said, the point of marriage is not to create a quick commonality by tearing down all boundaries. Rather, a good marriage is one in which each partner appoints the other to be the guardian of their solitude. In the end, love isn't about becoming the same, it's about becoming seen. If any part of this message found a place in your story, I'd be grateful if you'd like the video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to this channel.
It allows us to keep making these reflections, to keep holding space for wisdom that matters. Thank you for spending this time with me. And until next time, keep choosing love that makes you more fully you. And I'm Vernon. Thanks for watching my video.